speakers.
Hey everybody, it is Corey Poirier here, back with the Blue Talks Amplify Your Message event. I have a different background today, as you can probably see. I have my, where's it at? I'm looking the wrong side. My record player that we've been trying to get working for about a year, but I can't let go of because I love the way those old record players look. And so I figured I'd get it in the shot today rather than spending the time picking it up and moving it out of the shot. But if anybody knows how to fix those record players, I am still looking for somebody. Although it wouldn't be that easy to ship it away. So it'll be a little while still yet, I'm sure. So we're back with the Blue Talks Amplify Your Message event. I'm the founder of Blue Talks. I think a lot of the people tuning in may know that already, but just in case, Kelly here, Kelly Filardo is my host. She's an Amazon bestseller strategist, Blue Talks author. She's going to be a Blue Talks speaker here very soon, like i.e. less than a week from now. She's going to be speaking live. That's right, live during COVID. Live at an event next week, a small event. We are taking safety measures. It is restricted, but she still gets to speak live next week as a part of the Blue Talks world. So Kelly's going to be a Blue Talks speaker as well soon. So Kelly, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me again today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun. And it's funny because I also have a new background too, because yesterday I was senior sitting. So my friend needed her mom looked after. So that's why I had, an ugly background yesterday. But, and I love the record player in the background because, remember our logo we made is this big amplifier thing. And that's exactly what that stands for. So all about amplifying your messages. So this is
exciting. Wow. I never even noticed. I never even thought of that. The fact that was our logo as well. So that was unintentional, but it worked just the same. And it's interesting when you said that. I don't know why this came to my head, but have you ever heard of, what did they say? Have you ever heard of the term three-nagers? This is a side note, but three-nagers. My neighbor just told me this the other day because we have a 3-year-old, and I was talking about how he's not the same kid he was when he was 2, and she goes, "Oh yeah, that's because he's a three-nager." So when you're sitting, I was thinking of three-nagers for some reason. So for anybody out there that has a 3-year-old, this is a warning. This is a public service announcement. We were told that when he was 2, he would be the hardest and the biggest handful, and it would be gone by the time he was 3. And then when he got to 3, everybody tells no, 3 is the worst year. When he's 4, it'll be better. So we were led to believe 3s were going to be easy. So I just want to let anybody know out there, at least for us, 3s hasn't been easy yet.
I know. When my daughter was 2, same thing. Everybody says terrible 2s. And I said, no way, it was terrible 3s. 3s was hard. But, and then I had twins. So imagine having 2 3-year-olds at the same time.
Yeah, no thanks. We're done. We're officially 2 kids and we're done. So having said that, I think we're still, in some ways though, we still took it on ourselves at age, I'm 45 and we have an 8-week-old. So I just realized the other day I'm going to be 65 by the time my 8-week-old is probably moving out, given that kids wait till they're 20 plus to move out now. That's pretty scary. But we got lots of time between now and then. So only other thing I want to mention before we kick things off and bring our first guest on is with Blue Talks. If you're just discovering it right now, you can learn everything you need to know about Blue Talks at bluetalks.com. Now, I forget to mention sometimes the logo's up on the screen, so most people would know this, but it doesn't have the E in blue because blue stands for Business Life Universe. But bluetalks.com, blue without the E, you can find out everything you need to know. And instead of me saying the channel for the YouTube, where it's at, and the podcast and all that stuff, if you go to bluetalks.com, you can actually click on the book link to be taken to the Amazon page for the Blue Talks book. You can go to the podcast link for the podcast. And of course, you can click on YouTube right on the main page if you want to go check out the YouTube videos. That's everything you really need to know about Blue Talks. So go ahead.
Before we get into it too, I'm in the middle of a book launch right now. So yesterday I've been doing Jessica's book launch. And so yesterday, of course, every hour in the hour, I'm checking Amazon. And, it is so cool. Every time I check Amazon, the Blue Talk book is coming up. And so it's so cool because it's in number 1 still in like at least 5 or 6 categories and .com and .ca. Like number 1. That's how amazing this is. Love it.
Yeah, it's still staggering to me because it's going on now 3 weeks. I think it'll be 3 weeks, I guess, next Tuesday. So cool. It's going on 3 weeks. And yeah, I've had, so I guess that means it's a week or 2 weeks today, I guess is a better way to say it. I was just thinking, what day of the week am I on? So it's 2 weeks today. This is my 11th book. And I've only had maybe 3 of them that have stayed #1 that long. So this is a huge thing. So yeah, so that's really cool to add that. Thanks so much, Kelly. And then the only other thing I want to mention about the Amplify Your Message event, because we do have a Flip Your Script event that takes place 2 weeks earlier each time. The Amplify Your Message event is about how do you get out there and amplify your message as an influencer, whether you want to influence one person at a time or millions. How do you get out there and amplify your message using either and, or I'm going to say either or, speaking, writing, or podcasting? Those are the main platforms we focus on with this event. First 2 days are dedicated to writing, so we're still in the writing day now. Tomorrow will be into the speaking day, only 1 speaking day this time, and then we finish off with 2 podcasting days. So that's a good segue because we're into the writing day now to bring on our kickoff guest, somebody, I'm going to bring her onto the screen now, somebody who I've known. She just pointed out our last interview was probably almost 4 years ago, so I've known her, must be for 6 years now. And this girl is the real deal. Hanna Fitz, when it comes to branding and media, honestly, Hanna, I don't know if I've told you this, but anytime somebody asks me who knows branding, I always say Hanna knows branding. And so I'm so excited to bring her on here today to talk with this, because I really believe if you want to be an author, speaker, and influencer, your brand is everything. And I believe that we miss that a lot of times. It seems like a lot of people just go out there and try to wing it, and nobody really knows what they stand for. So I'm excited to have Hanna here with us today. So first of all, welcome, Hanna Fitz. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Corey. It's a pleasure to be here and to be with the Blue Talks family.
Awesome. And you had a chance to meet Kelly a little bit earlier. So, of course, Kelly will be my co-host here and might throw some questions your way as well, Hanna. Wonderful. But Hanna, maybe where I'd like to start, first and foremost, is can you maybe tell us a little bit about who you are, your backstory, for those who may be discovering you for the very first time?
Very good. So I'm actually from the island of St. Lucia in the Caribbean. I started my career as a new product development and product management officer for a financial conglomerate in what we call the OECS. So that's the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. I worked there for about 3 years. It was really my goal and my intention after university to get some corporate experience so that I could create my own consultancy. And so this turned out to be the perfect job. I was a project manager managing the launch of new products for this company across the group. When I left, I started my own boutique consulting firm. That was 10 years ago. So celebrated my 10-year anniversary in August. And started working for luxury brands, primarily luxury brands, but companies in almost every industry you can think of. So whether it was wine producers, retailers, service-based businesses, you name it, I have a broad experience, including place branding, which is to brand a location, a city, or a town. I spent about 2 years in Italy, where I also deepened my understanding of brand development, especially for premium and ultra premium brands, and have kept that positioning ever since. So clients come to me when they want to develop a world-class brand, when they want to take their brand global, and when they want to position themselves at a premium or ultra premium level to really attract high-end clients. Most of the people who work with me, they don't necessarily want to have large volumes of people to work with one-on-one. They prefer more intimate, personalized engagement with a handful of clients, but still earning a premium value for their service.
So it's interesting you say that, Hanna, because I mentioned that it's important for people to know what you stand for. And I didn't mention, but I think it's also important that your brand stays your brand consistently. And one of the things I noticed that you do really well on Facebook, when I look at your Facebook stories, is it always speaks for a luxury brand. Yeah. I haven't seen the photo yet of you like just waking up wearing a gym suit. I haven't seen that one yet. And I'm thinking that would probably be incongruent with your brand. But you really do practice what you preach, because every photo I see, it's like luxury brand. That's what I think.
Yes, one of the challenges that a lot of entrepreneurs have is really how do you create a consistent message? And consistency comes from 2 places. One being that the brand is completely in alignment with who you are authentically. But I also talk about leveraging that it factor. So what is that aspect of you that is the most commercially viable element that we want to amplify in the marketplace to draw people in.
And so now let me ask you this then. When it comes to the book side of things,
Yeah.
how important do you think, I mean, because there's a couple elements here. There's the author representing the book.
Yes.
And then there's let's say the cover of the book, because that's part of the brand too.
Yes.
How important is it that the author is in alignment with both what the book looks like and what the book reads like? And I'll give you an example when I ask this is my last book, The Book of Why and How, which I believe you have a quote in. I believe I have a quote by you. That book is meant to be timeless secrets. You know, it's meant to be about the timeless secrets you can learn from influential leaders. And that, in a large part, is my brand. I spend my time interviewing influencers to learn what they know.
Really?
And so the book cover had to feel to me like a timeless book cover. Like when you picked it up, it felt like a book that you could pick up 100 years from now and it would still feel timeless.
Yes.
And so my question out of that, is this something authors should be thinking about, what their brand is personally in relation to the book that they have out, also in relation to what the book looks like and what it reads like?
Absolutely. Everything must be in alignment. The book has to, remember, a brand is essentially a story. And so that story has to be consistent across all elements, whether it is through the book cover, even the title is a story. And so how is that story part of that bigger picture of the brand that you're creating, the brand that you are? So for authors and speakers, many of you are creating personal brands. And so how do you create a consistent narrative in the marketplace in terms of how you show up, how you dress, how you speak, where you show up is also part of the brand story, because placement is an element of brand. Right? The book cover, the colors that you use, the type of typography, all of these are part of storytelling. And so if you begin to see this as part of a whole, your brand world, the universe that you're creating, you're going to want that when people encounter something, they can say, oh, I sense that Corey signature style, or I sense that there is something about it that is part of the whole story. To use an example, I always use the story of fashion brands. So if you see a Versace dress, you know it's a Versace dress. There is a consistent brand identity being interpreted in design there. If they come out with something that's off-brand, people, it's like, what's going on with them? Like, did somebody else take over the company? That incongruency can shock a customer. And so you really want to create that consistency, because it is what will create stronger loyalty, stronger emotional connection, and ultimately lead people to buy and choose your brand over others in the marketplace.
So it's very interesting you say that, because when you mention that about Versace, it makes me think of Louis Vuitton.
Yes.
The red bottom heels.
Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton.
Louis Vuitton.
Okay, Louis Vuitton. I got to say that there. Louis Vuitton. Okay,
yeah.
Closer now. I said the very most English way possible to say that. I think I said it. But my girlfriend enlightened me to it and said, you know, the red bottom heels, I didn't even know that was. And since then, though, it feels like I tell her, hey, look, red bottoms. Like I notice it everywhere. Yeah. And so they're getting branding every time somebody walks in those shoes.
They're getting marketing. It's free marketing. And that's the age that we live in, when your brand can create an archetypal, an architectural structure in terms of design that becomes highly recognized. This is what people pay for. If no one could recognize the red bottoms, no one would pay $700 for them.
And that's the point I was going to make, is that I forget what the site's called. I just discovered a site where they posh something, or where they sell items to each other.
Right.
And this girl said, I got a pair of red bottoms for like $400. And people are commenting below, you're so lucky. Like, it's amazing. Yeah. Like, people are like, if I could get them for $400 and these are used, I will jump across 3 aisles of a plane to get them. So, I mean, it's to your point. Amazing. For those that know it and want it,
yes,
they see the value and they'll pay it every time. And the interesting part is shoes, it seems like, is the one area where people who love shoes don't just buy one pair.
They don't. And that's what they know, the psychology of it. And that's what every brand has to. So when I work with clients, we create what we call codes and symbols. All of these brands have codes and symbols that draw people in, because it is not enough for you to have a high-end product that people can't recognize. It needs to have some recognition. And so the strategy that a lot of the top brands use is they're not only marketing. See, a lot of people only think short term that I'm only going to market to my ideal client, and that's the only person I'm going to market to. Luxury brands know that in order to create desire, which is the number one thing they sell, they don't sell products, they sell desire. The way you sell desire is by having mass recognition while keeping the product exclusive.
Yeah, I love that. And to a large degree, I mean, I guess they've expanded further than that, but that's what Apple have been doing for years.
Totally.
Like, I say that now because it seems like now it's reached up to where people have found a way to buy an Apple phone, even if they really can't afford to buy an Apple phone.
Yeah.
Apple has created to such an extent that before it used to be for the early adopters only. Now, like, I don't care. I'll figure out a way to own it.
Totally.
So, but I mean, yeah, to your point, I mean, the desire side, like Steve Jobs, when he would do those launches where he would do this sexy launch where he'd have the thing in his pocket the whole time for pretend he didn't have one for you to see, and he'd reveal it and people would go nuts. And I mean, he created a mystique around Apple.
Yeah.
I think people wanted to, I want to be a part of this. I want to be in the inner circle.
Yes.
So here's the question then, Hanna. And I know this is a big question because we're talking about something that companies spend, in some cases, probably billions, but let's say millions to create, and thousands and thousands of hours to do.
Yes.
But for the average person, what are some elements we can start doing? Like, one of the things I thought of, not to interject before I let you answer the question, but I thought of this when you were saying about congruent brands. But if somebody was putting a book series out, I just thought of it. I haven't seen anybody with a book series. Maybe we should do it. But we have our book here, but like where it actually has like some sort of little logo or something on the book.
Right.
It's always on every edition of your book. I haven't seen anybody do that, much like the red bottoms. It made me think of the red bottoms. Like, why don't we have something on the book that is only with our book, so that whenever you see our book, you know that's our symbol. Anyway, but my question is, what can a person do to start creating some of this?
I mean, again, first of all, it starts with understanding your brand purpose and why your brand is out there. So a lot of people are out there to sell products, but when a brand shifts from purpose, from product to purpose, it really does help you create those strong connections. So one of my favorite psychologists, because there's a lot of psychology in buying, right? We know that 70 to 80% of why people buy is emotional. And so what we as brand strategists and marketers and even anthropologists try to do is, how do we understand how the human mind works so that we can tap into that? And so what do people like most? People like to get behind the cause. They like to feel part of a tribe. So of course you can create your own tribe. That's one little thing you can do to be able to engage people. So create your own community and your own tribe of people and make it exclusive. Add things that make it desirable, that people want to be part of this exclusive tribe and community. This is just one basic tip that you can get. If you want to go even deeper, we do something. I spoke a little bit about it factor. And from my research over the last, I've been studying brands from as early as I can remember. Even in my teens, I've had a fascination with how brands work. And ask any family member when we travel, I would be collecting magazines. And I was just curious, like, what would make a person want to buy a $30,000 handbag? Why are they buying this handbag over, say, the $100 handbag? And these were like my questions, even from a very young age. And in studying those brands over the years and understanding that, what I've realized is that all great brands have what I call an it factor. And it is an acronym within my signature proprietary system that we call the Irresistible Core and the Twist. And we help our clients do this leveraging 6 core dimensions. And these are what we call the cultural codes of the brand. When we understand the codes and symbols and the personality, so to speak, of your brand, we can understand how can you consistently leverage that through images. So, some of my clients, one of the things that we leverage, just to let you in, is of the 6 that we leverage is archetypes. So we use archetypes. So how can we know that all of us, even though you're white, I'm black, you're from North America, I'm from the Caribbean, someone is from Africa, whatever. There will be people within Africa, North America, across races who see the world through the same lens. through that same kind of archetypal lens, who might have a perception that life should be, you should go all natural and life should be pure and we should go back to basics. So this is a kind of innocent ideology, like that Garden of Eden philosophy, that you should eat natural foods and you should not stay away from synthetics. And then there will be groups of people who identify with that. And so now we tap into that psychology, that way that people see the world, and we position our brand to capture those people. And now they become part of our tribe and part of our family of people who see this world in that way, regardless of their culture, regardless of where they come from, their racial upbringing, their age, whatever. As long as they see the world through that lens, they're going to identify with us. So you have a brand like Harley-Davidson. And of course, people who identify with that rock and roll lifestyle, being the rebellion, going on your own on that journey and not really caring with the status quo, you're going to be a Harley family, right? Because they're tapping into that ideology. I remember one time I was in Austria. There was a beautiful place. It's like a castle up on a hill. And you can go watch the bird show. There was a bird show, so all kinds of birds, etc. And at the same time, there was a cross-country tour, something of Harley-Davidson club members from all over the world. So you're talking about 200 plus or whatever Harley-Davidson riders with their bikes coming up to that castle. And of course, the first thing you enter this castle and you see, there's a huge sign and it says, Harleys only. Right? So that's one, Harleys only. And they even have signs that say, if you're not a Harley, you will be towed. Or other brands, Jap bikes will be crushed.
Oh my God.
Right?
Wow.
And then all of these people, those Harley riders, were walking, they got off their bikes, they parked proudly in their exclusive parking, and they were all in their leather jackets and leather pants. And I'm not joking, man and woman, they all walked the same way. It was this, I call it the Harley walk. Like they had a certain walk about them. They had a certain way they were moving around that just felt like they learned to move in that way. And you could feel that sense of pride being in the Harley jacket, and whether it said like Harley Davidson Club Las Vegas, Harley India, whatever it was. And so what Harley Davidson has been really genius at doing is really selling the lifestyle, not just the product, but the lifestyle. I remember even going to a place in the South Pacific, I think it was Norway, like an island in the middle of nowhere, like, it was either Norway or one of the Cook Islands, but very tiny island. And there was the Harley sign and this, again, strange kind of message that really speaks to the Harley Davidson lover. And so it's global and people understand what the brand stands for. And you understand that if you want to send a message that we're rebellious, we will crush the Jap bikes, we will, whatever it is, and we're uber cool and we have our leather jacket and we have a swag about us, people, that's what they're buying into. That when you are part of the Harley Davidson family, you own a Harley, you become part of a community of people who see the world the way you see it.
Wow. So I feel like in that story and in explaining what Harley's doing, there's a masterclass in what we could be doing, because I'm sure there's elements of that we can recreate. Like, as you said, the community feel, the feel like you're either in or you're not in, like the feeling of that you belong. Yeah. There's, I think, the scarcity, because even though we didn't talk about that, it's only certain people financially that can probably afford a Harley.
Totally.
Whether that's right or not, a Harley bike costs more than a lot of other bikes. So
absolutely. And then there's the piece about taking a stance, right? So we will crush the Jap bikes. Like they're drawing a line in the sand. It's like, this is like, it's not about discrimination, but it's about like, we're taking a stance. Like we have a perspective on life. It's Harley or nothing.
It's, and I don't know if you ever heard about this one, but I heard it, I think I read it in a Seth Godin book, I believe, but he talked about there's a cruise that is only a Harley cruise now, and it was a cruise line that was struggling to bring on clients, and they started asking the clients what they wanted, and they found out they had a few motorbike riders on the cruise who said, well, in a perfect world, I'd love to be able to take my bike and take it with me on the trip.
Yeah.
They made it a cruise that you could only get on the cruise if you're a Harley rider, and you bring your bike, and then wherever you're going, Mexico, let's say, and you drive off with your bike and you go and enjoy wherever you're going.
The scenery. Yeah.
Yeah. But he said that this cruise line is booked, like, I think it was like 3 or 4 years in advance now from a cruise line that was struggling because, again, they said, we're going to focus and target one audience.
Totally. And that sort of strategy also too, if they're using the Harley brand, is another, I would love to just share this, is another kind of strategy that brands use. And I'm also a qualified licensing professional. So what you would see if a company is able to co-brand, so we're the Harley Davidson cruise, they're actually paying the Harley Davidson company a licensing fee, a royalty, to be able to use that name to target their audience directly. And so this is a strategy that also you can use. Say, for instance, you have a product or even a service. You might not want to spend all the time and invest all the money into building your own like brand from scratch and trying to build up the market. You might want to tap into or leverage an existing brand that already has a following and co-brand with them, right? So now you're able to already tap into a ready market through licensing. Or you might want to license your own brand and make it big. Either way, but it's a shortcut as well.
So it's interesting you said this, and Kelly, you might remember this from when we interviewed them on the Amplify Your Message virtual event last time around. But Mark Victor Hansen, who is with the Chicken Soup for the Soul brand, which, you know, not coincidentally, whenever you picture the Chicken Soup for the Soul book, they're all the same size. They all have the typeset similar, even though it's like Chicken Soup for the Entrepreneur Soul or Chicken Soup for the whatever it might be. And when you say this, though, what it makes me think of is Mark talked about something that him and Jack did with Chicken Soup. And I don't know if you remember this, Kelly, but they do a thing called bypass marketing, which is go directly to the consumer rather than going through the traditional channels. And one of the things that they did a lot of stuff where if they did Chicken Soup for the Golfer Soul, they would partner with the pro shops. Yes. So that it would be in the pro shop. So they're bypassing Barnes & Noble. But what they did as well, which you'll probably like this, Hanna, and I don't know if you've heard of this, but they partnered with, what's her name? Nora Roberts, the romance author. And they partnered with her. And together they partnered with Coca-Cola. And on the side of the cans of Coca-Cola, they had Chicken Soup for the Soul and Nora Roberts, her newest book, let's say. And the three of them partnered together. So that every can that went out had their book on the side, and they made some sort of partnership deal. But Mark said what they also found out from that process is that Coke drinkers don't read as many books as Diet Coke drinkers. They discovered this process. But by doing that, they did the shortcut, like you said. I mean, all three of them now had a shortcut because they were all, I think, leveraging off of each other.
Yeah, and that's something that brands also have to be careful with when choosing licensing or strategic partnerships, is that you want to be able to select the right one, because just as much as you can leverage one, it can actually be damaging to the brand if you don't use the right one or the right positioning. So there is also a science and strategy behind it. And also caution in terms of partnerships and making sure that partnership is going to long-term add to the equity of the brand.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why this popped in my head, but I guess it would be like you wouldn't probably see, or it might not be an advisable strategy for, say, Fiji Water to partner with Coca-Cola.
Yeah, or, you know, there was a time I remember Colgate decided they did a licensing program. And they decided to partner with this frozen foods company, and they created Colgate lasagna. Well, nobody wants to eat Colgate lasagna, right? And so I'm sure the thinking was, you know, you're going to eat this lasagna and have healthy teeth or whatever it is, but it just did not work.
Yeah, I could see where that's not a real good alignment. I mean, it's easy to say that now. I'm sure when you're all around the table and it probably looks good on paper, as they say. But I can see why that would sort of blow up in someone's face. So, Hanna, we're not winding down yet, but as we start that process, I want to switch back to the personal brand, because I think for people that are, whether they're writing their first book, whether they have multiple books out, whether they want to get into the writing business, whatever that looks like, they're probably going to have to become their own personal brand. And to your point, all these hints you're giving us and tips you're giving us, there's elements they can use. I mean, there's the element of scarcity. Maybe you decide to put a book out and you only print out 100 at a time. And say you got to buy the first 100 and then they're gone again for another 3 months and you got to wait till then to buy another 100. Like, there's elements of what we're saying you could work in that most people aren't doing with their books. Like I said, maybe you have a cool logo on each of your books that nobody else has. Maybe it says 1 of 100 and each one's numbered, whatever that thing you decide to do. Totally. But I think the other side is the personal brand. So what are some things we could be doing on the personal side? And maybe are you able to talk about alignment? Because I know we talked about this with 2 other brands, but people always say to me, well, I can't get on a stage. Like, or for example, people say, well, when you get on a stage, you should always wear a suit and a tie. Well, that's not the case. You could speak to only lawyers and it might make sense for you to wear a suit and tie. But you and I chatted about this, I think, 4 years ago with Gary Vee. I mean, Gary Vee could walk out with a hole in his shirt and mustard on his shirt and get paid more than most speakers are ever going to get paid to speak on that stage, because that's Gary Vee's brand. So how important is it for you to figure out what your own brand is and stay in alignment to it?
Yeah, a lot of times, I want to bring people back to the fact that a lot of people want to start with the physical attributes, and it all starts with laying the right foundation of understanding the brand values, understanding what the brand stands for, your positioning, your value proposition, and ultimately then creating that brand identity, that signature. The brand identity, the best way that I can explain it, if you think about, like me, I'm dark skinned. Though I'm dark skinned, in my DNA, I have both African and European heritage and a bit of Asian heritage as well. And then I also have, because of that DNA and that mix of different cultures, I have my brown skin, I have slightly slanted eyes, I'm 5'6", and so 5'7", I like to say, but I think it's really 5'6". And all of my physical features come from my DNA. So the brand identity is the same thing. It's intangible. You don't see it, but it does influence what you see. So you have to get to the heart and soul of your brand, of identifying those intangible elements around the brand values, brand culture, brand personality, all of these things. And then, there's a test that I have my clients do. So we do it's the Archetype Test, and no person is one archetype. So we actually identify what we call as the perfect fit for the market. So when you identify that, it allows you to also see, how do I communicate? And it's not about telling you who you are, because you already know. It's about deepening the knowledge of what aspects of you are the perfect fit for what you desire to create in terms of legacy, in terms of impact. But ultimately, it's not about changing who you are. It's about amplifying those aspects of you that are most marketable. The purpose of building a brand is to help marketing. So the brand itself is not marketing by itself, but it helps you more marketable, makes you more marketable. When you're more marketable, marketing becomes easier. So the thing about wearing a suit, well, that's just one style. But if you're going to choose your signature style, know that this is the style that you're going to show up as. So as a woman, knowing my brand and my archetypes and my brand identity and exactly what my brand stands for, I honor that in every way. I'm not trying to show up like a man or a corporate, with the classic corporate look. I have my signature style that I wear. I will, when I go for my official speaking and even events like this, I will dress in a feminine way, right? In a way that is consistent with my brand, but I always show up like that, right? And it's not me just showing up for show. I'm actually at home, and I'm going to probably spend a whole day at home like, this is just me, right? This is who I am, but I also try to make sure that it is carefully curated also when I'm on camera and when I'm with my audience. You won't necessarily find me in a t-shirt. You won't find me in like jogging pants, lounging at home. Like, this is just not me on a daily basis. So it's about, again, honing into the aspect of yourself that is going to, and knowing what you want to create long term. Most people think about making that next 5K or selling the first 5,000 books. But what is the bigger picture of that legacy that you're creating? How do you want to be remembered in the world? And then curate how you show up in the world. So my mom always said, dress for the life that you want, right? And so my question to you is, what is the life that you want? And dress for that.
Wow. So Kelly, I want to let you chime in here. I know you've been doing stuff behind the scenes, so I let you be, but I want to, before we let Hanna run, I want to get, see if you have any questions for Hanna around the branding side and maybe stuff related to the work that you do as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Hanna, thank you. I love the, how deep you're going into this, because a lot of times people just think about what's on the surface, and you're really digging deep with branding, which is awesome. So I work a lot with brand new authors. So these are people that come to me that want to be best-selling authors and get their books out there. Yeah. So what are 3 things that you would tell them to start with? So you've got a brand new author that wants to get their book out into the world. What are 3 things you would tell them to start with for branding?
Well, the first thing is, if you're a brand new author and you want to get your book out into the world, first of all, you need to know, who do you want to be in the world? So a lot of times people think about writing a book, but they don't consciously think about the process of why they're creating the book, the purpose for it, what is it going to be used for? Because ultimately the book is going to be a tool. Right? So what kind of tool do you need? If you're a soldier going to war, it depends on the war that you're fighting, right? If you're in the Middle Ages, you need a sword. If you're going to fight today, you probably need a drone. So you need to first figure out, like, I don't want you to see life as war, because enough people have enough, I don't want you to see the negative side. I want you to see life as, what is that legacy? What is I'll use the battlefield because it's such a great analogy again. What is my battlefield? What is the battle that I want to go out, and what is the victory I want to create in life? 10 years, 20 years from now, what do I want to be remembered for? What do I hope to achieve from this book? Do I just want to sell books, or do I want this book to contribute to bringing me clients? Because how you write a book just to sell the book and share information, as opposed to writing a book to attract clients, is going to be a different thinking. So I always say the questions that you ask will influence the quality of answer and the quality of action. So again, you want to know clarity on where you want to be, who you want to be in the world, what you want to be known for, and what is the purpose of what you're creating. And answering those questions will allow you to answer and act in a way that is consistent with where you want to go.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. Even when I coach people to write books, the first thing I ask them is, why do you want to write a book?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people will say to me, I want to write a book, but I can't seem to do it. And it's like, well, why do you want to write a book?
Exactly. And so all the questions that I asked, it's going to impact the brand, because the moment you put the book out there, a brand is going to be established.
Right.
Right? Because people are going to start to see you in a certain way. Remember, the brand lives in the mind of consumers. That's where a brand lives. So whatever space you're holding in the mind or in the heart of a consumer is what they're going to consider your brand. So all these questions are key to really shaping that.
And you're so right about that. We did a 5-day challenge, and one of the days was all about covers and titles. Yeah. And so we did a hot or not. So everybody got to, say, this is my title. And then the rest of the group voted whether it was hot or not. And I keep, trying to teach everybody that you are not your buyer. Your community is your book buyer. So go out to your community and ask them what they think is great, whether they like the title or whether they like the cover, and get their feedback, because they're the ones who are going to buy your book.
Right.
They're the ones that help you establish your brand.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's interesting. I just went and grabbed these off my shelf because I thought it was appropriate. But we were talking about how do you have a consistency with your brand? And because we have James Redfield coming up later on today at the end of the day, I just want to show you guys this. I went and grabbed some of his books and see if you notice a consistency here. You guys see a consistency?
Yeah.
Like he's got his cover is like a specific green.
Yeah.
And like I said, they're all, and these are 4 separate books, but the same green all the way through. And I don't have a couple of the other ones here with me, but all of them have that exact green.
I have his other one, his latest one.
Oh yeah. And which one? The revision of the Celestine?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's a revised version for modern day. And there's probably an intention as to why he changed the cover a bit for that, right? I know he was trying to reach millennials because he's discovered that a lot of millennials are picking up the book now. And so what I'm getting at though, Hanna, would you agree that's probably not a coincidence that those covers are all the same? Like same?
I mean, definitely he wants to keep a consistent theme in terms of like for people to recognize his books and his work. And also it's about aesthetic. If someone's going to have 3 or 4 of your books, do you want it to look, how will it look on the bookshelf, right? Absolutely. As a series. So this is also consideration of, in also creating like, especially books, like this is something someone's going to take into their home. How's it going to look as a piece decoratively? Like if the book looks like a great decorative piece, they're going to make it part of their home decor. And so this is something, and then that's more visibility for you.
And to this point, and what you just said, I never thought of it that way, but I have them all on the shelf together because it's the same color scheme.
Exactly.
So you're going to go, well, I need to put his books together. And then it reminds me, I have 4 books by him.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of other layers there. That
exactly.
You don't get it.
So there's a lot of pieces that must be considered because people are also buying also the experience around packaging, the experience around how's this going to look on. And more so today, there are people who are buying for Instagram. So how's that going to look in my Instagram feed, when I post it, that sort of experience. And I say it for also people with physical businesses. I know everyone here is an expert, but I say the future now for physical business, you have to have a business that is a destination enough for someone to want to Instagram it, so to speak.
Absolutely. I love it. So, Hanna, the most important question, perhaps, as we let you run, is 2-part. How can people get a hold of you if they want to connect with you, learn more about you, all that kind of stuff? But I also think it's important to ask, obviously, you work with clients, and you're working with big clients a lot of the time. Is there ways that people can work with you if maybe they're just newer or they're just starting, like whether it's a challenge, a podcast, or some other way they can access you? And then how would they do that?
Absolutely. And I work with all levels of clients. So I want everyone to know that whether you're new, like some of my clients are just launching, just starting out. Some are more established. We have programs that can fit almost anyone. I have something coming up that I think could really benefit all of you here. And it's a special live workshop that I'm hosting. So like I said earlier, a lot of people come to me because they want to create a luxury brand. So I'm hosting a special workshop on how to position your brand to sell services. If you're looking to sell high-end services, premium or ultra premium services, anything ranging from like $20,000 to even $150,000. And I know sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, that can't be me. Like some people can sell that, not me. But what I found is everyone has their own brand of magic. And when we are able to tap into, we have a process that we call the value proposition. A lot of my clients, I just had a woman recently who has never sold a high-end offer before. But she has a great expertise, like many of you writing your book, you have expertise and life experience to share. And she was like, Hanna, I can't sell a 20K package. And I really had to work with her through that. And she sold it to 2 clients in 2 days and within 5 days of creating it and within 2 days of recoaching her on why she needed to step into that. And those clients told her, we were waiting for you. Like we were waiting for this offer. So if you're curious about how to create those type of offers as an expert, I invite you to sign up at hannafitz.com/high-end-expert. So that's Hanna Fitz, HANNAFITZ.com/high-end-expert. And we'll be deep diving into how to position your brand for that. And the great thing is that many of you would have created your book. So that's going to give a really great pillar on which to build even further your brand.
Wow, Hanna, that's amazing. Well, I'm gonna attend it myself, so I can tell everybody I want to attend it, and I'm always looking for how can I level up and how can I go sort of next level. And so I'm gonna put the link right in the comments, Hanna, so that people can see it right away.
Wonderful.
And yeah, and so like I said, I said off the top, and I'll say it again: when it comes to branding, Hanna knows branding. So I want people to recognize that, and you heard how deep Hanna went here. So I want you to recognize how much this lady knows about branding. And as she said, Hanna, there's not many people that could say that they started studying branding when they were, 10 years old, 12 years old.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I started, but I was very curious and started asking questions around it, and just really very interested in how brands worked. Yes. But
I think that there's not that many people that could say they were that curious at that young of an age. So yeah. I think people can recognize right away it's your passion. So thank you so much for all you're doing. We're going to put the link in here. I highly recommend people check this out. And at the same time, I'm going to call it a to be continued with your permission, because it has been far too long. And we should look to bring you back onto our podcast in the near future as well. But thank you so much.
That sounds great. Would love that, Corey. Thank you. Awesome. And great work.
Awesome. Always a pleasure, Hanna. I so appreciate you. We'll let you go to the backstage area and go about your day. But thanks again for being you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Wow, Kelly, branding. Wow. I mean, does this lady know what she's talking about or what?
Absolutely. I love the whole Harley discussion, because it's so true when you get so exclusive like that, it's your own community, and you can pretty much do what you want when you have your own community like that. So, and I think the important thing too to remember too is that branding just doesn't happen overnight. Like, this is something that Harley's been doing for years and years and years and years, right? It's not something that, okay, now we have this amazing Harley community. It probably took 100 years to get to that.
Absolutely. And I mean, a lot of people have said, I used to share this story as a speaker, but a lot of people have said that Harley, the difference between Harley in terms of market share and growth started when one of their executives said this one story, which I love. What we sell, so what Harley sells, what we sell is the ability for a 43-year-old accountant to drive around in a town where nobody knows him, wearing black leather, and have people be terrified of him.
I know. And yet he might be the kindest guy in the whole world. And yet everybody's terrified of him because of Harley. And because I think I was dating a guy, and he said, Harley's not even the best motorbike out there, right? Like, they're not even the fastest. They're the loudest, but they're not even the fastest motorbike out there. And yet, they've created this whole exclusive brand around it.
Well, I can say this. I don't, obviously I don't ride a motorbike, so I can't speak this from experience. But what I've been told by a lot of people who do ride is that Indian makes a better bike, but Harley for many years sold whatever 60% or 70% market share out of the entire piece, and I think Indian was like 5 to 10. So, right. So yeah, to that point, I've heard that many times. And I mean,
like Coke and Pepsi, same type of thing, right? Like, they've been spending years and years and years developing their brand. So,
well, yeah. And to that point, it's interesting. I mean, you see it with Apple. People will stand in line for how long to buy the new Apple phone and pay twice as much as they are for another phone, or could for another phone, but yet they'll sit there and wait in line. Rolls-Royce, I think it is. I heard Frank Kern, the internet marketing genius, say one time how, I think it was Rolls-Royce, is built off the exact same car chassis as BMW, but people will pay 5 times more for the exact same car. I mean, it looks completely different, but it's built from the same people from the ground up, and people pay 5 times as much just because it's got the name Rolls-Royce. And I might be wrong on Rolls-Royce and BMW, but it's 2 vehicles. And then at the same time, you could even make that same argument. People will pay more for BMW than another car because of it has the BMW name on it. And so it is interesting to watch how branding works. I mean, I'm sure it's not as easy to create that kind of mystique and create that kind of community around your brand. But, we're getting a first class or front seat lesson in it right now with Blue Talks. And I'm talking with me getting a lesson in it right now, because we're aiming to create a community. We're trying to create multiple platforms built around this 3-letter brand. And so, yeah, we're getting a front row seat to it right now. It's obviously not easy, but I have seen how important the consistency is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all about getting to know the logo, the colors, what you stand for, everything, and when people know that, they can buy into your brand.
Yeah, and even, we have a private group for the Blue Talks authors. Even that, that's exclusivity. Nobody else can see what's going on in the group. And just so you know, and you wouldn't know this, and a lot of the other Blue Talks speakers and authors wouldn't, I probably have now about 10 requests a week to join that group from non-Blue Talks community members. And of course, I have to tell them, sorry, this is only for community members. And if it's 10 now, and we just officially launched a month ago, what's it going to be like in 2 years? And exactly. So people are trying to get in. People are doing everything they can to get in. And so same thing when we did the Blue Talks event in Western Canada, and we had people trying to scalp tickets, like people trying to buy tickets off others and go and saying, I'll give you this much money for your tickets. It's amazing to see that happening. And I feel it does speak to the idea that you can only get in if you're in.
Exactly. I love it.
Yeah, so this really stoked my way of thinking this morning and my headset. And I'm really digging the idea of how you can create a brand around your book. And it started getting me thinking about things that I could be doing with books to create more of a brand. Even Blue Talks, it started getting me thinking, is there some sort of cool thing we can put on, especially where it's a start of a series? Is there some cool thing we can put on it to actually have it become the series that people recognize the name based on them seeing this image on the book?
That's right. I love that. My books have all been so different. So I think that's why I haven't been able to create a brand around my books, because my first book was my memoir. My second book was my how-to book. And then my third book was 1,000 Tips for Teenagers. So it was a teenager book, compilation book that I did. And then, of course, then They're Beautiful. And then I also did a dating book. So it's been kind of difficult to create a whole brand around that because they're all so different. So that's one of the reasons I was really interested in her talk, is because sometimes you just don't know the brand right off the bat. The brand develops and it builds, and even like with Blue Talks. You didn't start that until 2 years ago now, Corey, that you started Blue Talk?
It's about, I think it's going on 1.5 years, but still upwards of 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you went in there with that brand in mind, which is important to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was all intentional. It wasn't a coincidence or an accident. And there is a lot of stuff behind the scenes about why Blue Talks is the way it is, like what it stands for and what the logo stands for and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, 100% that you're right. There is something behind the scenes, and there's something a bit deeper, as Hanna said, than just what do I want the logo to look like. And in fact, I would say the logo is probably the last part of it. It was the last. The logo we got done fairly quick, but it was kind of the last important component.
Right.
As part of a bigger picture of a lot of components. So yeah, it's really cool to think about, as a book, when you're putting out a book, are you considering the brand and your overall brand?
That's right.
Awesome. Cool. So I think we have our next guest on here. So I'm going to bring her onto the screen, since Kelly already knows her, so we can do our introductions.
Oh, excellent. Hey, Kim.
Good morning, Corey. Good morning, Kelly. How are you guys this morning?
Doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, but I apologize for being out of sorts. I know that my timing is off this morning, so I apologize for that.
Oh, no worries at all. It is all good. We're in a world where technology decides, so we don't get much of a choice in it.
Love to be here with you.
Awesome. So Kim, I'm so excited to get a chance to meet you. Thank you, Kelly, for making this possible. And Kim, what I was thinking is, I know I believe you're gonna present to us today. So am I correct on that? You're still.
Sure.
Okay.
Would you like to talk? We're talking about audiobooks today.
Yes.
Audiobooks and books. Any aspect of the book world, but audiobooks is a big part of that, and a part that nobody else is covering. So yes, audiobooks.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, no, I just wanted to double check. So, Kim, I guess maybe, and you'll probably do this anyway, but I guess the first part is, of course, for us to get a chance to know you, is maybe if you could tell us a little bit about your backstory and journey, And then, of course, after that, we can chat for a second, and then Kelly and I can jump off and let you go right into telling us about audiobooks.
Absolutely. So my background is that I, maybe a lot like your audience, I actually spent a long time in corporate as well, but I am now an entrepreneur. But when I graduated from college, I went into corporate right away and did what they told me to do. I started at the bottom, worked my way up, and spent 17 years at one particular organization, actually in a variety of different places with that organization. But as I grew up into sort of upper management and became an executive director, the shine sort of wore off for me a little bit. I was in what they call golden handcuffs, right? Where you have grown to the point where you're doing really well and you're making a lot of money and it doesn't really make sense to leave, but I didn't really love it anymore. And I realized that that was a very difficult time for me, because, you know, the money was great, but if you don't love what you're doing, it's very hard to keep going into work, right? So I resigned, and actually I resigned at 15 years and then stayed another 2 years, and then ended up resigning for real in at 17 years. And by then I had trained my replacement and we left on very good terms. And I went to my friends and family and I said, you know, now I'm going to be a full-time entrepreneur. I had some businesses on the side, and I decided that I wanted to become a full-time entrepreneur. And I asked my family and friends, what do you think we should do? What I should do, right? And they said, well, you were so good at what you did at corporate. Why don't you just do that full-time? And I thought, oh, that's a great idea, because clearly I'm good at it, right? So absolutely, I should do that. So I went about building this business around what I was good at. And about 18 months later, I had built it to a 7-figure business. It had generated over $1 million in revenue. And I woke up one morning feeling like I hit a wall. I thought, wow, I have just built my very own jail cell. I didn't want to do it when I was working in corporate, and now I was doing it for myself. But now I had employees and I was responsible for other people's paychecks, and I had clients that were counting on me and contracts. And I had this entire infrastructure built around something I really didn't want to do anymore. And that was a tough time. That was what Brene Brown calls a spiritual awakening / breakdown, because I was super unhappy. I didn't really want to do that anymore, and it wasn't fun. And I went out onto a mountaintop. I actually left work. Didn't go into work one day. I told them I wasn't coming in and I wasn't going to be taking any of my calls or anything. And I went out onto a mountaintop to try to find the answers. And of course, they weren't up there, but I was hoping. And when I came back down, I met my son, who was 15 and a half. He was at the door and he said, Mom, I have a problem. I thought, great, somebody else's problem to focus on instead of my own, right? And so I said, what is it, sweetheart? And he said, I'm 15 and a half and I'm going into summer. And 15 and a half is a crappy age because it's just too young to get a summer job, because you have to be 16 in the United States to get a summer job. And it's too old to go back to summer camp because that's boring and stupid now. And I'm too old for summer camp. And I said, aha, well, you are never too young or too old to be an entrepreneur. So why don't we build a business around what you love doing? And he said, that sounds fun, you know? And I said, yeah, I know how to be an entrepreneur. I've done that several times over now. Let's build a business around something that would be fun for you. And so we put all of his fun stuff into Google. He liked to be on stage. He loved improv. He loved children. And so up came, why don't you be an audiobook narrator for kids' books? And he was like, can we do that? And I said, I think so. So we ordered some stuff on Amazon. We had him, when it arrived 2 days later, he set it up in our under the stairs studio, under the stairs in our coat closet. and we had an audio studio at home. And we started auditioning for audiobooks. And sure enough, it went gangbusters. And we started becoming an audiobook production company. And now we have over 100 books out on Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. We have 2 bestsellers, audiobooks. And a lot of really good time was had creating the business. And so that's how we got started. That's sort of my story of how I ended up getting into it. And it was really just about how to create a business around what you love.
Wow. Well, there's so much a person could dive into there, but I want to let you, create some magic, teaching us a little bit about what you've learned, what you know, Kim. So maybe I'll save a question or two for the end.
Sure.
But, Kelly, did you want to add anything before we let Kim take over? I'm just blown away by that story.
Well, I love this story, and probably one of the reasons I love it so much was because my daughter's 21 and I have twin boys that are 17. And so their big thing is, what are we going to do? Because, my one son is very entrepreneurial and does not want to get a job. And so he's just doing anything that makes him happy. And so I love that. You and your son did this. So me and my son, we started up a tea club, monthly tea club together. So I love it. That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
You set up a what club?
Tea. So monthly tea club. So you can buy tea and get tea every month. So
wow.
We've been selling it in the farmers markets. So, but yeah. So
do you have that delivered to your house?
Yeah, you can have it delivered. So, but the cool thing is you and your son did it, and like me and my son did this, and I think that's so cool is, we're being leaders and helping our children to understand that they don't have to just go get a job in order to make it in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Love it. So I'm going to jump backstage and let you take over, Kim. Kelly, are you going to jump backstage as well, or?
Yeah, I can jump backstage. And so, Kim, you can share your screen.
Okay.
You want to show your presentation? Because I know if you want to do that, you're welcome to. If not, you can just more than welcome to just go ahead and share your stuff and go.
All right. So let me see if I can present. And I'm not sure how to share my screen, though. Let me look at.
On the very bottom, it says share screen.
Okay.
Or you can just take it away and talk, whatever you like.
Right. I can make it happen. And I don't know. Let me close this and share screen. Aha. Okay. This looks like it'll work. All right. Can you guys see my screen okay?
No, we can't see it yet.
Okay.
And then I get to do it without. Go for it, girl.
Awesome. So my name is Kimberly Hobscheid, and I am the creator of I'm Hearing Stories, which is an audiobook production company. And we're going to talk about how to get your book turned into an audiobook, created as an audiobook, and published in 60 days or less. It's definitely doable. I've done it multiple times. So if you are an author, you're excited about the audiobook world, and you want your life to be a whole lot easier, you're in the right place today to learn about audiobooks. And you can definitely create one. A lot of people think that, that it's very difficult. They're wondering, how do I even get started? How much time will it take? What are the steps to create it? Where do I find somebody can be a narrator, a credible, reputable person to record it? And then if I got it done, how would I distribute it? How would I get it out there on iTunes, Amazon, and Audible? Maybe they're asking themselves, should I self-narrate? Or where do I find a place to record it? How do I get it on audiobook platforms? How do I get it to audiobook listeners? How do I know how much to charge? What if I'm not very tech savvy, or they're not sure that their genre will do really well, or can they actually do it? And as a matter of fact, all of those questions can be answered today. It is definitely doable, and we can talk all about exactly how to get it done. So first, we're going to talk about 3 secrets about audiobooks, and then we'll talk about some benefits of audiobooks. But first, we're going to start with the story of how it got created. As I said, my son was 15 and a half, and it was just the wrong age to be anything. And we decided to have him be an entrepreneur. He set up his own home studio in our coat closet underneath the stairs, Harry Potter style, one night, a Saturday night. It doesn't take that much to be able to create that. And then we started auditioning for audiobooks. There are tons of audiobooks out there. It actually turns out that only 1 in 20 books are created as an audiobook, which is really phenomenal and fascinating when you think if you do create an audiobook, you'll actually be one of the top 5% of authors out there, which is really fun if you think about it. The interesting thing is that one of the secrets of audiobooks is that it is really about a third of the population who only listens to audiobooks. As a matter of fact, there is about a third of the population that listens to audiobooks sometimes and reads books sometimes, and about a third of the population that only reads books. So I don't know if you guys can respond in the chat. I'd love to hear if you guys are audiobook narrator or audiobook listeners or book readers or both. Just throw a note in the chat whether you are an audiobook listener, an audiobook reader, or an audiobook listener or a physical reader. That would be fantastic. I'd love to know. Let's see. I'm going to try sharing the screen one more time. I don't know if I can see this. Can you guys see my screen this time around? See if you can. Maybe you can. All right. So when we decided to be an audiobook narrator, we actually went, this is my son, he published it, he published a couple of books before I did. And when we decided to become an audiobook narrator, it was wonderful. Our authors really enjoyed us and enjoyed what we were able to create for them, enjoyed the narration that we actually did and our voices, which was fantastic. And we went ahead and submitted our books. We'd read the entire thing, narrated it all by ourselves, and submitted it to iTunes, Amazon, and Audible. Felt absolutely fantastic, and we were super excited about it. And then we were rejected. It turns out that iTunes, Amazon, and Audible actually have audiobook requirements that you have to meet a minimum standard in order to make an audiobook presentable on iTunes, Amazon, and Audible. Have you ever noticed that those audiobooks all sound about the same? They have the same volume across all of the audiobooks. They have the same sort of intro and outro. They have a little bit of spacing before each chapter, and you know when the next one's coming. And they have all kinds of rules that you need to follow so that they sound cohesive, that all the audiobooks that are created sound the same. And we had not done it that way. So we went back. We were a little bit brokenhearted, but it was an opportunity for a learning experience. And it was frustrating, but we ended up learning a lot. And we finally got 3 books submitted and approved after about 60 days. In 90 days, we actually had 12 books, about a dozen books that were already approved. And then after a year, we actually had multiple books out there, and 2 of them had become bestsellers. So we did everything from all kinds of genres. We had opportunities to read fiction and nonfiction. We had opportunities to read like romance. We had opportunities to read something that was called zombie apocalypse is actually a genre out there. There is young teen, and there's older methodologies, all kinds of different things out there. And we narrated just about everything. But it turns out that we learned a lot through the process. And so I thought I'd share some of the secrets of audiobooks for this particular audience. So number 1 is every book that is written out there, all of your books actually have audiobook royalties, and they are entitled to be able to earn audiobook royalty share. So if you have a book out there, you have the right to be able to produce an audiobook. And unless you have transferred that to a publisher when they published your book, you actually have the audiobook rights to it, even if it hasn't been published yet. So it's an extra stream of revenue from a book that was already written. We actually did an audiobook for my brother, Jeff. He had a book called Earning Without Being Employed. That book was 35 businesses anyone could start and run. He published the book about 14 years before we got our hands on it and started creating an audiobook business. When we got our hands on it, it had actually not sold a single copy in about 7 years, because it just sort of, the marketing died out. It wasn't of interest anymore. And we started working on the audiobook, got some marketing out there about doing the audiobook, and started advertising for it. And my brother called me up and he said, I don't know what you're doing, but my book has started selling again. And what happened was we were breathing life back into this book, the physical book, because we were talking about the audiobook being created. So we had a coming soon page and we had some activity on it. And people who saw it were like, well, I might as well buy the actual book while I'm at it. So we actually were creating new business for him and buzz about his book. So his book started selling again. And then after 9 months of audiobook sales, his audiobook sales and royalties actually surpassed his book sales and royalties after about 9 months. So you can earn additional revenue from a book that you've already created and breathe new life into an older book by creating an audiobook. As I said, only 5% of books are created as audiobooks. That's 1 in 20. That means 95% of your competition has been eliminated if you turn your book into an audiobook. Now, I have a question for the audience. I'm curious as to whether or not you know the statistics on whether or not a person gets all the way to the end of a book when they purchase a book. So statistically speaking, what percentage of the people who buy your book do you think translate all the way to reading the book all the way to the end? Well, I don't see anything in the chat yet, and I don't know if the chat is active and live, but I would love to know your thoughts on whether or not you think a book, what percentage of the time you think people read your book all the way to the end. And it turns out that about 10% of book buyers read a book all the way to the end. However, audiobooks are much different. About 80 to 90% of audiobook purchasers listen to the book all the way to the end. So if the object of the game of writing a book is to get your people to finish it, audiobooks are really a powerful way to go. So don't neglect the audiobook listener. If you have people out there who are wanting to consume your material, but they only do it in the audiobook format, you need to put your book into an audiobook so that you are able to reach those listeners as well. Now, don't neglect the book in the first place, because you can't create a book you can't create an audiobook without creating a book first. But once it is a book, I actually recommend starting the audiobook and then creating some momentum for your book by creating an audiobook as well. So what are some of the benefits of creating an audiobook? Number one, you're going to get a whole new tribe of listeners, audiobook listeners that end up in your listening world to be able to pay attention to your material. You increase your discoverability because there are people who are only searching for audiobooks out there and not looking for actual books. You'll get new business because you have an opportunity to be able to get in front of a larger audience. Now, if your book is something about your business, because you have a business on the side, if you're not just an author, but say you have a coaching business and you write a book about your coaching methodology, you'll have an opportunity to get in front of a wider audience and generate new business because of your audiobook. Your audiobook is actually downloadable on an iPhone. So I left my iPhone in the other room because I wanted to stay focused on the presentation. But if you have an audiobook, it will actually be downloadable onto their iPhone and your material will be with them. They won't have left it behind on an airplane like I've done with a couple of different books. And they will be able to get access to that 24/7. And because it's on their iPhone, they'll have it with them always, and they can pick up right where they left off. They'll never lose their page. They'll be able to be right where they need to be because it's electronic and digital. Additionally, if you narrate your own audiobook, you have this wonderful way of connecting directly into the ears of the audiobook listener. Your audiobook is now another way of physically or auditorily connecting with your listener. They're getting it in mixed media and have an opportunity to consume it in a different way. If you hire a narrator, the narrator may actually have somebody that is following them that listens to all of their books, and they like what this particular audiobook narrator narrates. And so you may actually get additional people finding your material because they're following the narrator, and the narrator's voice is so captivating that they will listen to whatever that narrator narrates. So you may get extra attention because you have somebody else that is promoting your book. So why can't you do it? The answer is you absolutely can. We actually have a program that helps audiobook listeners and audiobook and authors create audiobooks for them. It's called Just Do It For Me, and we can help you get your book made into an audiobook and available on iTunes, Amazon, and Audible in 60 days or less. It's definitely a fantastic program, but what I thought I'd do today is take you through that step-by-step formula that we use to produce our audiobooks. So you can do it yourself with us or without us. We would, of course, love for you to work with us, but I'm going to go through the steps that it takes in order to create an audiobook all by yourself. And you can do it just by taking these notes. And afterwards, at the finish of my presentation, I'll be happy to give you the step-by-step formula in written form so that you can download it as a PDF. But you're welcome to take notes on this right now. So does that sound good? I hope so. So we'll get started on it. The first step out of 20 steps, it's actually a 20 step, so you can number your page 1 to 20. The first step is figure out your why. Why do you want to create an audiobook? What is it about the audiobook that you want to achieve? Do you want a larger audience, or do you want another stream of revenue? It's perfectly fine if you want both, but if you want a larger stream of revenue, you're going to want to get it on iTunes, Audible, and Amazon as quickly as possible. They represent about 95% of the traffic for audiobooks. And if you are exclusive with iTunes, Amazon, and Audible, they will pay you the most in royalty share. If you go non-exclusive, you may be able to sell it from your website. You may be able to sell copies in the back of the room. You may be able to sell it in CD format. You can sell it in a variety of different ways, and you can get it into libraries where you won't make any additional money, but it will get to a wider audience. So that's the second possible why, that you want to get to the widest possible audience. And if you want to do that, you're going to want to sell it in different formats. However, iTunes, Amazon, and Audible, if you don't sell exclusively to them, they will take another 15% of the royalty share. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you think if you go exclusive with them, you will get 40% of the sale of the audiobook. And if you go non-exclusive with them, you will only get 25% of the sale of the audiobook. It does seem like a lot smaller percentage. So it is something that you'll want to consider. All right. So next, we're going to go through finding a narrator. And what I want you to do is find a pool of narrators. That is a pool, like multiple narrators, not just one narrator, not just a neighbor or your uncle or your best friend who wants to narrate your audiobook, because they may not be the best voice for it. If you want to narrate your own audiobook, absolutely, that is definitely a possibility. I know a lot of people who really do, and they're great narrators, and they are performance artists. For example, Brene Brown is a person who narrates all of her own stuff. She is also a performer. She's done a TED Talk. She's an excellent public speaker, and she is a performer as well. If you are a performer, if you do a podcast or a radio show, or you're very strong as a performer, then I would encourage you to consider narrating your own book. However, if you're not, and you have a monotone voice, and you are you are not used to being able to perform on stage, you might consider getting other narrators to audition for your book. The reason I suggest that is because we did a survey of our audiobook narrators, and when we did, our audiobook listeners, and when we did, we asked them multiple questions, but one of the questions we asked was, should an author narrate their own book? And we got feedback that in most cases they should not, because it's a performance art, and they really need to have a skilled audiobook narrator narrate the book, because you may have heard an audiobook yourself and thought, oh my gosh, this guy or this girl cannot read at all. They are not entertaining. And I just want to click off the book as quickly as possible because it's just not engaging. So you definitely want to find a pool of narrators and audition yourself and check with the rest of the other people and see what the favorite audiobook narrator for your book would be. Once you do find a narrator, you're going to want to create an audition script. Or once you find a pool of narrators, you're going to want to create an audition script where all of the narrators read the same 500 words or so of your book and audition against sort of each other and compete for the audiobook narration position. So you'll have about 500 words that you chop out of your book. And if it's fiction, you'll want to have dialogue. If it's nonfiction, then you'll want to get the meat of the book. You definitely don't want to just do the introduction. You'll want to have something that represents the book very, very well. So it might be chapter 4, it might be chapter 1, it might be a piece of dialogue in the middle of chapter 9. But what you want is an audition script that's the same for all the narrators to read. So you can compare apples to apples. Once you have decided that you're going to do an audiobook, step number 4 is to create a teaser campaign. And the teaser campaign is, I've decided that I'm going to do an audiobook. It's coming soon. And enter here if you want to enter your name and email address here if you want to get notified when the audiobook comes out. So step number 4 is to create that teaser campaign and start the juices flowing on the idea that your audiobook is going to be created. Now, this is where we got a lot of book sales as well. So you do want to make a note of where the book can be purchased on your teaser campaign. Step number 5 is screening the auditions. So you've given the script to your narrator pool, and everybody starts narrating or auditioning, and they start coming in. You're going to want to listen to all of the auditions at once so you can compare apples to apples. There will be several that you know right away. This is just not the audition piece for me. It is not the person that I want as my audiobook narrator, and that's perfectly fine. You can thank them and let them know that you've selected somebody else. But then there will be one that is the one, and you want to have them come on and do your entire book for you. So you'll notify them. Step number 5 is screening the auditions. And then you're going to want to negotiate rates with your audiobook narrator, the one that you've selected. So you want to make sure that your idea of how much you're going to pay them matches their idea of how much you're going to pay them. There's several different ways to pay audiobook narrators. The 2 primary ones are creating a royalty share program so that you will get half the audiobook rights sales, and the other person will get the other half, and you will pay them on the revenue that is generated from the book once the book is starting to be for sale. The other way is to pay them per finished hour. And what that means is that if the book lasts 3 hours once it's produced, you will pay them 3 hours worth of per finished hour. Now, they may spend 40 or 50 or 60 or 100 hours creating those 3 hours. It doesn't matter. You pay them per finished hour. A typical per finished hour rate is about $150 to $200 per finished hour. And it seems like a lot, but it's actually really not. If you have a 3-hour book, paying $600 to an audiobook narrator to narrate your book, which may take them somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 60 hours, is definitely worthwhile. So absolutely make sure that your idea of what they're going to get paid and their idea of what they're going to get paid are the same. Will you be paying in royalty share or per finished hour? Step number 7 is you're going to create an audiobook contract. And that is that you agree in writing with them that you are going to pay them a certain amount in order to produce the audiobook for you. It needs to meet audiobook quality standards. It is going to be, you actually certify that you have the right to produce the audiobook because you have ownership of the audiobook rights. So you'll have to fill out a contract with them explaining exactly what their rules, what their agreement is. You'll also specify when the audiobook needs to be completed and in what format it needs to be delivered to you. Then you're going to create a social media announcement. Why? Because you just signed a contract with a narrator that says you're going to produce an audiobook. And so what you'll do is you'll take maybe that audition sample or maybe their first 15 minutes, and you'll put out a new teaser campaign and a social media announcement saying, we have found a narrator. It's going to be narrated by Jesse Starr or whoever your narrator is. And you'll make an announcement out on social media. And then again, allow people to sign up to be notified when the book is completed, when the audiobook is available for sale. Next, you're going to create some cover art. Funny thing about cover art is it is one of those things where it's a tradition to turn your book, and it's now quality standard that you turn your book cover into a perfect square in high definition. So basically you take your book cover and you turn it into an audiobook cover perfectly square. The reason it's perfectly square is a tradition that it used to be sold in CD format. CDs were circles and they were sold in a case that was a perfect, and the cover of that was a perfect square plus the spine. So when people are purchasing the audiobook format, even though it's not a CD anymore, it is recognizable in that perfect square format. They know that they're purchasing the audiobook. And so you need to turn your book, your cover, basically your rectangle into a square. Then you will review the sample, the first 15-minute sample from your audiobook narrator. They're going to turn that into you, and you're going to make sure that they're on the right page, pun intended, that they are reading it the way that you want it to be read, that they're reading it with the proper pronunciations of the words that are in the book. If you have heavy medical terminology, you're going to need to help them through that perhaps. If you have, if it's fiction and you're making up names for places, you're going to want to make sure that they're reading those correctly and that they're reading it in the format and style that is the same as what their audition piece was. Next, you're going to do your second teaser campaign, because now after their first 15 minutes are finished and you've signed the contracts, you know approximately when it's coming out. So you're going to put the second teaser out saying it's coming soon. The cover reveal you're going to do because you now have a cover for your audiobook, and you are going to send out more social media announcements. Next, you're going to do a full audio quality screen. This is step number 12 for those of you who are taking notes. Step number 12 is a full audio quality screen. You're going to listen to the entire book. If there is anything on your book, the book that actually has clicks, or somebody has coughed in the middle of it, or if they've dropped a coffee cup or a pen, or you hear some jangling, maybe some jewelry in the background, you're going to want to note that of the time in the book. It'll be chapter 4, minute 4, second 52. And you're going to note that there is some jangling jewelry, and they're going to have to go back and edit that out, either rereading it or re-recording it, or taking it out electronically in the digital format. So you do want to do a full audio quality screen to make sure that it does sound perfect in the way that you want it to sound. And then once it's complete, you're actually going to submit it to the platforms. You may submit it to Overdrive, you may submit it to the people who are going to turn it into a CD for you, or you're going to submit it to iTunes, Amazon, and Audible. And it will go through a quality screen. And once it passes quality screen, step number 14 is it will go through quality control. Once it passes quality control, step number 15 is it is available for sale out there on all of the platforms that you've chosen to put it out. Congratulations, you now have a link to be able to have people buy, and you have your audiobook available for sale. Congratulations, you are one of the 5% of books that has been turned into an audiobook. But we're not finished yet, because there's more after it's done. Haven't you heard that it's not just the book writing that's difficult, it's the book marketing that's difficult? Well, the same thing with audiobooks. Now you've got to get it past, now that it's available for sale, you actually have to get it in the hands of your customers. And one of the best ways to do that is to get customer reviews. Now, audiobooks are unique. In books, I know that you're trying to get reviews and get to bestseller and so on and so forth with your book. You're going to need to do that even more importantly with audiobooks. Audiobook listeners are very, very picky. Since it's a multimedia or a media production, and it is a performance art, they will be evaluating not only the book content, but the performance of the narrator as well. And then the review of the book as a complete whole with the story and the narration. So the secret, though, for listeners is that they don't really want to hear a review from somebody who doesn't really write audiobook reviews very often. Audiobook listeners are picky in that they want to see reviews from people who review other books. So you definitely want to find your friends and family and your distant friends and family that review audiobooks regularly, and you're going to want them to get those reviews done as quickly as possible. Early and often for your customer reviews is very important. Next, you're going to want to create something in multimedia to get the audiobook listeners engaged. Because if you write a blog about your new audiobook, you're not going to get people who are audiobook listeners to buy it. And the reason why is because they're familiar with the media of audio. So you're going to want to get out on podcasts. You're going to want to get out on radio shows. You're going to want to get out on video. You're going to want to get the word out maybe on YouTube in a variety of different ways in multimedia so that you can capture those audiobook listeners, because they aren't going to be reading blogs necessarily. Some of them will, but not often. And then you're going to want to put the links to buy pretty much everywhere. You're going to want to tweet them, put them on your Facebook page, put them on your website. I cannot tell you how many authors I have had to chase down and remind them to put the links to buy for their audiobook on their website, and perhaps on their business card or their other media, perhaps on their signature line, and add that link to buy the audiobook there as well. Oftentimes they'll forget that they need to advertise the audiobook link, and they'll just have the book link there. And you want to be sure that you let people know it's available in audio as well. Step number 19 is doing ongoing marketing. And that's really important. If you have drip campaigns for your book, you're going to want to have drip campaigns for your audiobook as well. That is definitely something that you want to make sure that people know about. And we're going to get to step number 20 in a second, but step number 20, often people guess what they need to do, and it's follow-up. Follow-up is a lot of what people say, but I consider that number 19. Number 20 is actually creating part 2, your next book, the sequel. Why? Because audiobook listeners are like Netflix watchers in that they always want the sequel. Once they've bought one, they love a sequel. They love a series. So definitely start planning part 2 of your book, the next generation of it. So that's the 20-step process for our success formula. And you can definitely do your audiobook right now by creating that. You may feel a little exhausted that was 20 steps and it came at you really, really fast, and you're already exhausted just thinking about all of those steps. Or you may feel like you're super excited and you can't wait to do your audiobook, and that's fantastic. And many of you are like, that was a lot of information and I just need a little bit of help. So if you're looking for help, we are in the business of changing lives. You are in the business of changing lives, but you may not be in the business of being an audiobook narrator or an audiobook producer. You are an author or a speaker or a coach, or you have a business of your own. Maybe you are a writer full-time. That's fantastic. You may not be an audiobook publisher. So if you'd like a little bit of a hand, if you'd like somebody to help you, we are here to do that. So we have taught you all kinds of things in terms of how to find an audiobook narrator and all the things that you need to do in order to do audiobook narration. But what we haven't done is taught you all the things that you need to do in order to make that happen. So if you'd like more information on that, we'd be happy to do that.
Good. That's excellent, Kimberly. You know, I'm so glad to have you on board here with us, because you seriously are the only person I know who focuses on audiobooks.
Isn't it?
Yeah, like there's nobody else that does it. And so I was so happy when I met you, a couple of months ago. It was like, awesome. Somebody that teaches something that's completely different. And, I always tell my clients, if you want to do an audiobook, you should be the one narrating, because, sometimes, like I've got this French friend of mine, right? And whenever I read his book, I can hear his voice in my head. So it would be really weird if it was somebody else narrating that book.
Yep. Yes. And if they are performance artists, if they've ever done any podcasting, if they have a great voice, it's just a matter of learning the steps to do it. And I actually do teach an audiobook class as well about how to become an audiobook narrator for people who want to do multiple books for other people. But if like Brene Brown is a performance artist, she's very, very good. And you do want to make sure you make that connection with your listener if you can.
Right. But I still remember too, one of my cousins had an audiobook for Eckhart Tolle. And I could not listen to it because his voice was just so monotone.
You picked out one that I cannot listen to him. He's so brilliant.
Yeah.
Very monotone. You're totally right.
Yeah, and I would have loved to have learned more, but I just couldn't listen to it. So I had to read the book instead of actually listening to it because his voice was just so monotone. It was just, I found it very difficult. Yeah.
So I liked one of the things I have to say, Kim, that you said about the, in terms of the idea of deciding and determining whether or not you are the narrator for your book, because I agree with what you said that not everybody is meant to. I narrated my previous book, The Book of Why and How. I narrated that when I put it together, but I've been interviewing people for years. I've spoken on 2,000 stages. I performed stand-up for 700 shows. And so I felt like it made sense. But at the same time, I know the me I was before all that.
Yep.
And I wouldn't have been the right guy to narrate my book back then. So I agree with both of what you're saying. Like, Kelly, I agree. It should be the author, but then a big caveat, if the author can pull it off.
Yep, you're totally right.
If the author can't pull it off, I don't think it should be the author. So I think, because you got to remember, most cases, I don't know what the percentages are. Most cases, we don't know the author's voice. So in the case where you said you couldn't imagine anybody else reading that's because you know him. But if you didn't know him, you wouldn't know what the voice is supposed to be. So I would rather hear somebody that pulls me in and has this cool, sexy voice than the author if they don't have that. Like, for example, would you rather Morgan Freeman narrate your book or a person that stumbles over every time they try to do a radio interview?
Yep.
So I love that. I think you have to be really honest with yourself as to, are you the right fit for your book?
Yep.
And it's always hard to pull the trigger and say, I'm not the right fit if you're not. But I think it's braver to say, you know what, I'm not the right person. It's like you see a company where the CEO realizes I'm not the right person to be leading this company. Yep. And then they take a lower position. I always admire that because what was better for the company. So in this case, serve the book. So if you're the best fit for the book, serve the book. Anyway, I just wanted to add that I love that you said that because I think that's a crucial component. For me with audiobooks, I'm really picky. Like Eckhart Tolle, same thing. I struggle with his. A friend of mine loves Eckhart Tolle. I gave her in the audiobook, and I wanted to get her into Think and Grow Rich. Actually, sorry, I'll correct that. It was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
Book I ever read, changed my life. And she's a musician. We had her on last time, Kelly, Christine Campbell. We had her on the Elise event. And so Christine, I said, you gotta hear this book. And she goes, or you gotta read this book. And she said, I only listen to audiobooks. So I got it for her, I found it. But because it's read as if it's not Dale Carnegie, but somebody from back then reading it, it's very prim and proper, and you're gonna love what happens to you. Anyway, she couldn't deal with it. It was like, I think she told me she got 20 minutes in and gave up.
Yeah.
So to your point, Kelly, she didn't get all the great insight from Dale Carnegie because of the narrator.
You're absolutely right. And there are people who, and if you are an audiobook listener, you know that there are books where you're like, I cannot take this person's voice one more minute. There was another book that I read that was read by the author, and you could tell it was actually two authors. And they each read, like, they decided to themselves, like one would read chapter 1 and one would read chapter 2, right? And then they went back and forth. Their voices were so different. And you know that they made this agreement because they wanted to do it, but their voices were so different and was so incompatible. One was super fast, one was super slow and monotone. It was so painful to read and listen to. And the material was great, but I just couldn't stand it. It was just very, very hard for me to take. So I did not finish the book.
So true. So Kim, you'd given us the link I think I saw the link that we can share inside the comments. And as Kelly said, this has been an absolute pleasure. I was glad when Kelly said somebody around audiobooks, because as she said, it's hard to find somebody that specializes in it, but it's also such a big area. And you kind of motivated me to want to get the Blue Talks audiobook together. I don't know how we'll do that with, you and I can maybe chat about that, but we have 34 co-authors, so I don't know how we would do it, but we can figure that out later. Maybe we drew a draw among the people that have the greatest voices in it. Who knows? Or we have an Emmy Award winner who's a voiceover artist within our Blue Talks ecosystem, Asia Blenza. So maybe that's the route. So we'll figure that all out later. But thank you for triggering that idea, Kim. And this has been an absolute pleasure. So I just wanted to thank you from my perspective, from the bottom of my heart, for sharing the time with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Kim. So great to see you again. I just saw you a couple days ago too, so that's awesome.
I know, that was such a treat. I love what you guys are bringing to the table. I think it's really, really phenomenal. So thank you for having me on Blue Talks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim. We'll let you jump to the back, but thank you again. You made some magic happen today.
Okay.
Awesome. Very cool stuff. Amazing. I love it. Audiobooks is an area that even last time around we had not one person talk about audiobooks. We probably won't have people talk much about audiobooks for the rest of the day today as well. I doubt we'll go there with James, and so I'm not sure if Harriet will talk about it. I know I already recorded the interview with Evan, so I know he doesn't talk about audiobooks. So very cool to bring in a topic we haven't talked about much. Having said that, we're a couple of minutes behind time, so I think I'm going to bring our next guest, Harriet, right on and make some magic happen right away. Kelly, if that's okay with you.
Excellent. Bring her on. I can't wait to see Harriet again.
Awesome. Hi, Harriet. How are you doing today?
Hi, Harriet.
Oh, I'm doing well. How are you doing? I hope you can hear me. Let me make sure my volume is up. Can you hear me?
I can hear you okay. Can you hear her, Kelly?
Yeah, we can hear it great.
Awesome. And you said see her again.
Right.
So have you guys met before?
Oh, Harriet and I have a very long history. In fact, when I won the Woman of Distinction Award,
Women Talk.
to present Harriet.
Women Talk, yes.
Here. So, and then plus because she's the co-author with Dr. Barry Lyka's book, Living a Fantastic Life. So and I was their launch manager for their bestseller campaign. So Harriet and I know each other from way back.
Wow, that's
Back in the
fantastic.
days, we still, yeah. And Kelly's an artist. She never tells anybody that. She's a really good artist. So I have 2 of her paintings.
That is awesome. I know that Kelly does paintings, and she's mentioned it to me in passing, but I don't even know if I've ever seen one. So Kelly, maybe I'll have to get you to send a picture, or I'll pick up one or something. We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, for sure.
I know you've said that you do it, but I haven't seen one. I don't think. I might be wrong. When I see one, I'll remember.
There's one right behind me on the wall there.
Oh, that's one of yours?
That's one of them. Yeah.
Awesome. Wow, very cool. Awesome stuff. So, Harriet, I want to jump right into things. This is our first time meeting, but I feel like I know you because of talking to Dr. Lyka, even Kelly. Like I said, I didn't know how well you guys knew each other, but Kelly had mentioned you as well. So, Harriet, maybe I'll get you, might be the best place to start, to tell us a little bit about who you are and your backstory for those viewers who may be discovering you for the first time today.
Oh, you bet. I'll just summarize it very quickly because I don't want to give you a whole Bible of myself. So I have, I guess I like to say I work. I'm a chartered professional accountant. I am a blogger, an ultramarathon runner. Of course, a best-selling author, but I'm many things, and I'm a philanthropist and all of that stuff. And I like giving back to the community. And my biggest passion is serving others. So I do have a story, and I don't know if you want me to get into it or not. I don't know. I can. So that's really basically who I am in just a few sentences.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly dive into your story a bit. I just think it's such a cool marriage that you wouldn't normally hear. You're a chartered accountant and ultra marathon runner. That's you don't usually hear those 2 back to back in a bio. So I think that's cool already. So Harriet, I guess maybe the starting point would be if we talked about the book that you put together with Dr. Lyka. Maybe you can talk about how that book came together. Like, why did you want to write a book? What was the reason to partner with Dr. Leica? I'd love to get a feel for the book itself.
Oh, you bet. So I'll just basically kind of tell you how it came to be. So the way my life, basically, I'll start off with how we got to writing the book and how it all happened. So I was an international model, and I'd model around the world. I'd graced so many covers, over probably 20 cover girl and all that. Then I told my parents, well, my parents actually told me that I needed to focus on a formal education. So I did that. I enrolled myself in a university program in Calgary. So it was at the university that I befriended a fellow student whom I had absolutely no idea that his attraction to me was actually like a psychological trap that was disguised as love and later on would become deadly. So I got to, and I was one of those naive victim of domestic violence. I had no idea what exactly a healthy relationship was. I was young and naive. So anyway, I trusted him. And as I got to know him, he showed signs of an abusive, he had abusive patterns. So he'd yell and scream, but later on he would, of course, apologize. And I thought, wow, that's, he's apologized. So that meant it was okay. So this went on and on and on until later on I decided, sorry, I had a noise. Until later on, it got so bad that I had to go to the police and really ask the police, what can I do? He's being very abusive. Of course, the police said there's absolutely nothing they can do because nothing has happened. But the only thing they can do is offer me a restraining order. So I was happy. I took the restraining order, and I was quite happy because now my life can go back to normal. Anyway, it was one night I was studying at the university, and I decided to go home, and because it got late, so I went home to just get some rest. So I got into the elevator, and I was in the elevator. I heard a voice, and it was him. He said, "How dare you put this restraining order against me? Don't you know I'm the only man who ever love you?" And I was frightened. So I started screaming and screaming, and he really shut me up. He put a sock in my mouth so that I can be quiet and dragged me into his vehicle. So we started driving and driving and driving. And then as we were driving, neither one of us had a cell phone. So he saw a telephone booth and asked me to get out of the vehicle and call my parents and say goodbye to them, because this would be the last time that anybody would ever hear from me. I said no. So he repeated and said, "Harriet, I need you to go call your parents and say goodbye to them because this will be the last time that they'll ever hear from you. Because in the back of my car, I have a rope, a knife, and gasoline. So you better do it now." I said no. So that second no was so upsetting that he took a knife from the glove compartment and he stabbed me twice on my leg. And that there was blood gushing everywhere. So when I woke up, even today, I have absolutely no idea how I got from that point in time to the hospital. When I woke up, there was my father, and there was the doctor, and there was police and media in the waiting room. And the doctor told my father that I would never walk again. So when the doctor said that, I was shocked. Not too long ago, I was an international model, walking the runway full of confidence, and now I was a cripple and depressed. And the only thing that separated my confidence and my depression was my trauma. So I started feeling sorry for myself, saying, why me? Why me? How could this happen to me? And the dialogue went on and on. And my doctor, meanwhile, recommended me. I started doing physiotherapy. So I decided to do physio just to learn how to walk because I wasn't able to walk at all. So it was in the waiting room where I was waiting to get my physio when a little girl on a wheelchair came in full of so much passion and gratitude. And she came into the waiting room, and I was hoping she wouldn't talk to me because I was not in the mood. But of course, this little tenacious little girl kept asking and asking, "Why are you here? Why are you sitting here? What are you doing?" And I told her, "Okay, I'll tell you my story." So I did share my story with her, but in a version that are 9 years old. And when she listened to my story, she said, "Oh my goodness, wow, you really should share your story with the world." And I didn't know what this 9-year-old meant. 9 years old, what does she know? So basically, when I got to know her, in their family, they use storytelling to impact the world. So to her, this was another story. So she said, use your story to impact the world. And then I asked her why she was in the hospital in a wheelchair. So she had said to me that not too long ago, she was in a car accident. And basically what happened, they were busy going to a dance recital. And unfortunately, there was a head-on collision. So she now, both her parents died. She was motherless, fatherless, and homeless. Yet she had so much gratitude. So when I heard her story, I thought to myself, my story is nothing compared to her. But really, life is not about comparing stories. It's about what you do with what happens. So it was later on after my healing process that I decided to connect the dots from the back. And I started my own business called Empowered Me. And in my business was basically empowering young girls who had been in domestic violence situation. And then my program got really well known that I was nominated for an award. And Dr. Laika was sponsoring an event called YWCA Women of Distinction that Kelly mentioned earlier. And I was in the category called Turning Point. So that's where I was nominated and I was the recipient for that award. So I was excited, I was kind of honored. And then I got to meet Dr. Laika, and I always remind him and paid for, we set a meeting and then we talked about perhaps one day we should write a book. So that's how we got together. We met for lunch and different coffee meetings. And that's how we started writing the book, The Secrets to Living a Fantastic Life, with 13 golden pearls within. So that's how we started writing the book.
Wow. When you said, do I want you to share your story? I didn't have any clue how powerful a story that would be and what you went through. I had no idea of either of those. So, wow. So I guess the big question then would be, how hard was it turning that into words and actually putting that in a book? Like, was it therapeutic or was it traumatizing or was it neither? I'm just curious, what that process was like.
I think it was definitely a mix of emotions. There was moments where I'll relive it and I'll go through it and it'll be very emotional. But at the end of the day, I was thinking, I'm writing this book to help other people, because most people go through something and they feel like they're the only ones going through it. And that's part of writing a book. You really want to write a book to impact the world so that people can really understand that they're not the only ones going through what they're going through. There are other people who've gone through, but how did they overcome it? The breakthrough.
Wow. So I guess then it's I guess the other thing I'm wondering about with book is, what was the experience like co-authoring a book? Like, did you find that was more challenging, easier? Like, what was that process like? Because not everybody's co-authored a book.
No, actually, writing a book with a co-author can be it's interesting because sometimes you have that writer's block, and the other author will say, how about you do this? So you have to have intentional purpose together. You have to have timelines. You have to have communication. There's a lot of going back and forth because you might think this is how I see the book, and your co-author like, maybe let's not do that. So you always have to compromise. Fun, you laugh, you cry together. So I think it's more fun co-authoring a book than writing it on your own.
Love
like
that. And so, Kelly, did you have questions for Harriet? I know you have to take a call sometime soon, so I want to see before you have to run off. Did you have any questions for Harriet you want to ask before I jump back in?
Actually, I rescheduled the call so that I could stay on the interview with you and Harriet. So, yeah, I'm so proud of you, Harriet, because I know how hard it can be to write a book, and and how hard it can be to be vulnerable, right? Like, that's the big thing when we have such impactful stories like you and I have, sometimes it can be very challenging to put our stories out there, and we get very scared about what other people are going to think of us, right? And so, it's so, brave. You're so brave, and it's so awesome to see that, you decided to put your book out there and do it. So, and I was so honored to be able to, do you guys' book launch, and it was so exciting watching you guys become best-selling authors and everything. And so I'm so excited to see how amazing you and Dr. Like are doing with your book. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. I know you are the core of the book becoming a bestseller. It's always, I think when you're writing a book, you need to always go to the experts, because the thing is, you should know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Writing a book is definitely what we're good at, but really marketing the book and making it go where it needs to go, you need to find an expert. And that's where I think experts like Kelly come in, because you've done what you're really good at, and now what? What do you do?
Yeah, what do you do now?
What I would recommend. Get the experts too. Yeah.
I know. And I love the stories that you guys tell in your book. I think that was what I really enjoyed about it, is that the way you guys broke the book up into the different chapters and talked about the golden pearl, there's a little story for every one of the pearls. And so it's so cool, because it's like you're in the room with Harriet and Dr. Leica having this conversation. And that's what's so cool about the book. Yeah.
And so, Harriet, I guess follow up to that is, what would you like to see happen as a result of the book? Whether that's you reaching even more people with that important work that you're doing, or whether it's helping you get to more places and open more doors. Like, is there any kind of wish list that you've either had for the book or you have for it now?
No. Oh, I have a long list, but first and foremost, I want to reach as many people as we can, because at the end of the day, when you write a book, it's about the impact. The money comes later, because if your goal is to make money, it doesn't work. But you should actually focus on impact, on how many people you can impact, because that's how it all kind of comes together. That's number one. I also, for me to even impact people, is to be on a platform, to really share my message and just let the world know it's not really it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens. So really, that's the core of our book.
Yeah. And here's the book. Can you guys see it? Yeah, there you go.
Yes, yeah.
Your fantastic life. I love it. It's awesome. So.
I was looking to see where my copy is. I know we were moving into a new house, and my copy arrived as we were in the middle of a move. So it's like it's somewhere on its own, but it's in the move right now. So it actually was the only book on its own, where normally I have bookshelves of books, but they were all dismantled. So it stands out to me. I keep seeing it. So it's actually talking about book covers. I don't know who chose the book cover, or how did that book cover come about, because it is such a powerful book cover.
Oh, we went through different scenarios. Initially, we had a white cover, and then we went to a black cover, then we went gold and black. So it was a work in progress. But at the end of the day, I wanted it to have golden pearls, because I've always loved golden pearls ever since I was a little girl. But which little girl doesn't have that? Every little girl has some kind of a passion they love. But the golden pearls, and this is very symbolic, because the golden pearls actually do exist in real life. So that's why and I'm not sure if you know that they do exist in real life.
I didn't. No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. You did?
I didn't know.
Oh, okay. So it's the way it forms, it's a very rare oysters that can be found in Asia. So basically what happened, a foreign substance goes through the shell, and it really irritates the shell of the sea oyster. And then after it irritates it, eventually a golden pearl is formed. And it's very rare. So that's symbolic to the stories that we went through. Is the irritation and the trauma, and then at the end of the day, you get this beautiful golden pearl. So it's the same thing. The trauma that we went through, it really symbolizes, at the end of the day, we came out on top. So it's kind of like a breakthrough.
I think that's awesome, and I did not know that. So I always love to learn something new every day. I did not know there were golden pearls, and I guess the follow-up question to that is, and this is more related for other people that are maybe launching a book, but what have you done since to let people know about the book? For instance, have you done podcast interviews or media, or I'm just curious what you have been doing. Of course, we're in a different time than we would have been 2 years ago or a year ago with the pandemic. So I know probably most of it's virtual, but have you guys been doing interviews to let people know about the book?
Oh, you bet. We've probably done in total, I would say, over 100 podcasts. So we've really been out there on the platforms. And every time we get a podcast, of course, we have to share with on LinkedIn or Facebook, because you always have to keep going, being active. You want people to keep seeing you. If they don't want to see you, eventually they'll be like, I keep seeing these people. Oh, I better click and see what they're talking about, because your face is everywhere. And also being on the book of the day. So we do that as well. You have to keep going. Also, having an email list. I think that's one of the key in book selling. You have to really keep in touch with your email list and keep telling them, hey, this podcast came out, check it out, see what the message is. Even though after a while, the messages do seem to be the same, because each interviewer seems to ask similar questions, but you just have to package it differently and tie it with a bow, so it sounds excellent.
So you said something there, Harriet, that a lot of people, I don't necessarily realize how important it is, which is the email list. So did you start building an email list maybe for this, or were you building an email list because of the book? Like, I'm curious if it's something you've already known the importance of for a while, or did you know you had a book coming out and then you started building it? I'm just wondering which came first, the chicken or the egg, I guess is the question.
I started it from a long time ago, because you don't want to just start it right now. You want to keep it growing, because then people are familiar with what you do and people like what you're doing. And I know that sometimes some of my email list, they ended up buying the book because they know who I am. Some of them may not even read the book. I said, no, you have to read the book. But I think email list is one of the core of book selling, because you have people who are on your email list. They're familiar, that name branding. They're like, oh, Harriet, Tinka. Okay, I'll just buy a book. She has something coming. So they're always supporting you. So that's very key to anyone who's in any market that you're doing. Email list is important.
Awesome. And Kelly, did you, I don't want to, again, take away any questions from you. So did you want to jump in? Is there anything you're wondering about what Harriet did in the process?
I love their story. And actually, I still remember calling Dr. Leica the day before our book launch and said, guess what? And he said, what? I said, you guys are already best-selling authors. And he's like, well, how did that happen? And so that was like before the launch, they became a best-selling author. And the reason that I believe it happened is because Harriet and Dr. Leica were already promoting the book. They were already on shows before the book even was launched. And so that they were already getting momentum for their book, which I think is very important. A lot of authors just think, well, I'm not going to promote my book until it actually happens. But, I remember encouraging, Harriet and Dr. Leica, start promoting your book, like as soon as we have the cover, because that's when you're starting to get people excited about your book and they're going to get ready to buy it. And so, so I love what you guys did, and you guys have been such a tremendous success story. So it's so cool to see, so cool to watch.
Well, I'll add into what you said there, Kelly, just for people listening, when it comes to your book and why you should want to talk about it before it comes out and before it's even launched and after, is the numbers I've heard over and over again is they say you have about an 8-month window, meaning people, like especially the media, are most interested 4 months before your book is launched and for 4 months after your book is launched. And so you want to try to obviously capitalize as much as you can within that window. But I think what most people do is, as you said, Kelly, they miss the first 4 months. And if you only have 8 really in total where everybody is interested, then you've done yourself a disservice if you lost 50% of that. So it sounds like Harriet and Dr. Leica jumped on that front end as well.
Exactly. They absolutely did. And that's the only way I can explain how they became a best-selling author before my team actually did the launch. So it's excellent.
But it keeps that momentum going.
It is. It's so exciting because even like Corey knows, I'm in the middle of a launch right now with another one of my clients. And so yesterday I was up till 3 a.m. checking the Amazon list to see where she was. And sure enough, Harriet, your book came up, then Corey's book came up, and a couple of more of my clients' books came up, and it was like, oh my God, this is so cool to see how my clients' books are staying in the bestseller list. And so I love that because you guys are like so active and promoting your message and making an impact and making a difference. And that's what it's all about. It's not about the money. It's about the stories that we want to tell. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. You have to keep the momentum going. And I think some of the things that some book writers do is they write a book, whether it's a bestseller or not, and then they're done. They think, oh, okay, I did what I had to do. But no, it's constant promotion. You have to have your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Instagram, whatever it is where you find the most influence. You just have to keep going and doing that. And even, I mean, it's not possible now, but the speaking engagement, that's when you actually sell your book because you're doing your presentation and people already love you and they love your message. So at the end, you just autograph the book and you sell. I find you sell most books in one day when you have a key engagements.
Especially when you have a story that's powerful like yours and powerful like Dr. Leica's. I mean, these are powerful stories. So when people hear that, I think they want to run to the back and be able to get a copy of a book that shares that story in much more detail. And I feel like as well, you're right that most people, Harriet, say, okay, the book is done. I'm done. And I've had people that have said to me, I'm so excited. I'm finally done with this book. And I said, what do you mean done with the book? Well, I just finished writing it. I said, done with the book? You haven't even started yet. You just hit the starting line. You just put your foot down to get started. You haven't finished. The marketing is honestly, and as you said, Harriet, hire people if it's not your thing, but the marketing is the hardest part. I think you would agree with that, Kelly. That's where you spend your time. I'll correct that. Writing your story is not easy. But what I mean is the marketing is a hard part that people often just write off as once the book's written, if it's a good book, it'll sell itself. I rarely see that happen.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you, Corey. In fact, it's always funny when people say to me, Cal, how is your book selling? Right? How are the book sales going? And I say, well, they sell when I promote them. Right? And it's my fault that a lot of times my books aren't selling is because I'm not promoting them enough to help them sell. And so, you like Harriet, you and Dr. Leica are doing a fantastic job at that because you're always, getting on radio shows, you're always promoting your book, and that's why you guys are selling them. It's awesome. It's awesome to watch.
So, Harriet, I'm going to, as we start to wind down, I'm going to go a step further and ask you, what do you think the future looks like? And what I mean by that is, do you see a book number 2, or do you feel you've shared your story and now you're going to use this platform to share your message everywhere far and wide? Like, I'm curious if the book bug is done or if it just started.
Oh my goodness, we just planted a bug. So there is another book that's in the works as we speak, because when we started writing the book, actually we had 20 golden pearls. And that's when a lot of people said, well, that's a lot of golden pearls. Perhaps just divide them in half. So we went with 13 golden pearls with an extra chapter. So we have more to come and even more to come. Also business, how to live a fantastic business life. And then maybe later on, as time goes on, we'll chop each golden pearls and just have a book on love. And then we'll have people write on love and just go from there. Maybe a book on intention. So this is just the beginning of so many things to come. And the other thing about writing a book is getting testimonials. That is so important. And what most people ask, what happens when you get a 1 out of 5? And I think it's okay. You don't want to get 5 out of 5 because it almost looks like it's not legit. So if you get that one bad testimonial, I think it's good. See what they're saying. Some people just give you a 1 because for the sake of it. I think it's good to give feedback where the writer can improve on, not to just send it because you're angry or something. That adds no value to the author. So whatever testimonial is, I think it should be given to improve the writer's skills or story or whatever it is. So that's the biggest thing also when you're writing your book, get those testimonials. So that will help other people buy a book. Because if you go to Amazon and that book has no testimonials, you really don't want to buy it. It's like, I don't want to be the first one to buy this book. So that's key as well.
So true. I'm so glad you added that. And Harriet, maybe I'll ask you about the other side to that, which is endorsements. Did you guys focus at all on getting endorsements? And when I say that, I mean like people that are maybe in a specific industry or people that are considered the experts in a certain field? Or did you focus more so on, like you said, testimonials on, let's say, Amazon and other book platforms, or a bit of both?
Oh, we went with both. You don't want to limit yourself. Go all out. Whatever is going to help you, definitely go all out. Don't just focus on this and that. Whatever works, because everything has its own place. So we had a Jack Canfield, who really had an impact on our book, and everybody knows who Jack Canfield is. He's a chicken soup of the soul. I almost forgot the title. Oh, that would have been bad. Yes. So he really, really advocated for us. And also he encouraged us to use storytelling, because with anything, storytelling really gets people. And you just remember when you're a little boy, or Kelly, when you're a little girl, and you remember your parents sitting down and telling you a story once upon a time, you really get excited because you want to know what the story is. So it's anything in life, whether it's business or it's any industry, when you have stories, people can relate to it. So that's one of the other things that I found really helped, and testimonial as well. So there's so many key ingredients to writing a book, and researching and see what other thought leaders have done and experts. So researching is important as well. It's a package.
It's a package deal. So Harriet, as we bring things to a close, I guess I would, and Kelly, if you have another question or want to put something else out there, I won't stop you, but I just wanted to say, Harriet, this has been an absolute pleasure. Your story is so powerful. I'll call it a to be continued, because I'd like to, with permission, reach out and maybe bring you onto my podcast as well. But in the interim, I'd love to just find out how we can connect with you and learn more, and how people can grab their copy of the book.
So to connect with me directly, my website is www.empoweredme.ca. So that's where they can connect with me. I can have a conversation with them, or however it works out. And to get the book, it's also on amazon.ca, but you can also get it directly on dralika.com. So dr.com. So that's where they can also get the book. And some of the money that if they go to that website, some of the money we do donate it to the women's shelter. So that's a good place to get it as well.
And that was dralanlika.com?
.com, yes.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. This has been amazing, Harriet. I knew it would be. Kelly, like I said, I don't know if you have any parting words for Harriet, but Harriet, I just thank you so much. I salute you. I honor you, and I'll call it a to be continued.
Good. Thank you. It's so great to have you here, Harriet. And like I said, I love watching you on your journey. And, you know, it was so great. You and I both have won the Woman of Distinction Awards. And, you know, we both best-selling authors. And, you know, we both love to empower teenagers and youth. And I love it. Love the work you do, Harriet. Keep it up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And I love the film that you put together. Remember the film? I haven't much heard about it.
Yeah.
Kelly has so many things that she's done. Yeah. And so great to have a conversation with you as well, Corey. It's been great. And I can't wait to be on your podcast also.
Awesome stuff. Well, I will reach out and make that happen. And in the interim, we'll wave the flag for all the great things you're doing and tell people all about the book. So thank you so much, Harriet. I so appreciate you. We'll let you run to the back and run off and enjoy the rest of your day. But again, to be continued.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Wow. So what a powerful story. Amazing, powerful story. And I have to say, I don't know why it occurred to me to share this, but when Harriet was talking about the whole idea of storytelling, how powerful it is, and remember when you were younger and your parents said once upon a time, I actually, it's funny because when I was a kid, my mother and father did that, I think a little bit, but I don't have a lot of strong memories of it. But our son, Sebastian, we started story time with him. And now the deal is he gets 2 long stories and 2 short stories. And so that's like 1 long story from me, 1 long story from my girlfriend, 1 short story, So every night we have to come up with new stories. Because I tried one night to say the same story from a few nights ago. He goes, Daddy, I already heard that one. New story. So I can't, and he's such a good memory. I can't even like trick them into thinking it's a different story. So every story we have to come up with four new stories. But the best part is when we do it, he'll go, one more long story. And we say we already did two. He goes, lots of stories. But he's like, he tries to negotiate upwards. Like if we say two, he say 4 stories. And he even seems to be smart enough to know that he might land at 3. He might get an extra story by doing that. So anyway, but we do stories every single night. And everybody we talk to says, your kid's so like intuitive and observative, and like he observes everything. And I really think a lot of it has to do with story time.
Absolutely. You know, it's I don't remember my parents actually ever reading me books either. But, you know, I do remember when our family would get together and I would stay up late at night. My parents would be drinking, you know, and they'd get drunk, and then story time would happen, right? They didn't even know what was going on, but I would stay up late at night and hear my grandma and my aunts and my mom talking and telling all these stories of things that happened to them in their life. And it's so cool because my son, he was telling me, I just love talking to grandma. She's just got so many stories to tell, you know? And so it's so funny that, you know, she doesn't do it when she's drunk anymore because she doesn't get drunk anymore. But, you know, it's just funny how they're passing these stories on, right, from one generation to the next. And that's why I believe books are so important, is because we need to get these books on paper or audiobooks or whatever, just so that we can pass them down to the generations. And that's why I love paper books. I'm not a big fan of, you know, Kobo or Kindle or that. I love, you know, holding that book and being able to write in it if I want, or, you know, get the author's signature, you know, that sort of thing. I love that. So, yeah.
Well, there's never been an easier time to create a memoir, for instance. If you want people to know about your life story, years ago, I mean, you would have had to convince a traditional publisher to sign you. It might have taken you 3 years of writing and convincing the publisher, and then you might have to get an agent in between to pitch you to the publisher, and then it could still cost you thousands of dollars. And now, I mean, truly, if you wanted to go print on demand on Amazon, you could do it. I mean, you still should hire somebody to edit your book. But you know what? For some people, if the whole legacy is just to give it to your family, they might even like you to put it together with the errors because they might feel that's really you. But my point is, you could legit, if all you want to do is have a book for your family to know your history, you could put together a book for pretty much nothing. Like
absolutely
low hundreds. And
or free. Or free. It doesn't cost anything to put your book up on Amazon. And in fact, I have a lot of clients that come to me just for that. It's just because, no, I just want one book. I just want to be able to order it for my kids. I want to put my life story in a book and give it to my kids. And they don't even want to sell them. And, you know, you can get your ISBN number for free. You can design your own cover if you really want to. You can get a template from Amazon and then type your book into that template for free.
Yeah.
So,
the only reason I even said low hundreds, like 100 or 2, is if you wanted to have somebody format it for you, if you wanted to have a certain book. But I mean, that's only if, right? Like if you don't care about any of that stuff, you could just slap a book together for free. So, I mean, so from that end, we've never had a better time, like you said, about getting our stories out. In truth, I believe everybody has a book in them because I believe everybody has at least one powerful story, like one mega powerful story that the world needs to hear. And so, truthfully, I would love it if every person in the world had a book out. I know that everybody won't, but I would love it if they did. Even if they never want to get into the marketing side of a book, just to have a book out. If I was a CEO of a company now, or still a manager of a sales team or what have you, and I never got into entrepreneurship for myself, I would still see the value of having a book out with my legacy in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. You know, my first book was my life story of, you know, being when I got burnt as a 2-year-old to, you know, 10 years ago or 11 years ago. And then but that includes me being married and everything. But now I'm divorced, a single mom, an entrepreneur, and, you know, all my dating adventures. And that's a whole another book of the last 10 years of what I've done in my life. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because I actually had to do a workshop for a bunch of teenage entrepreneurs. And my son was actually one of the participants. And so they had me speak for 2 hours and talk about perseverance. And it was interesting because my son said, "Mom, you told some stories I'd never heard of. Like, I thought I knew everything about your life, and yet some of the things you talked about, I didn't know." So that's why I think it's so important for us to get our message out there so our kids know, what we've been through and, why we make some of the decisions we make. And yeah, I think it's cool.
And to share it further down the line.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. So Kelly, I'm going to take a bit of a break here because we have Evan Carmichael coming up, but that was a pre-recorded interview, so he's on the schedule. So what I'm going to do for those watching and for those that are watch the replay, I'm going to upload Evan's right now. It's a shorter interview, I think 25 minutes, so I'm going to spend the time getting it uploaded right away. It'll still finish in time so that you can come back and see our featured guests for the day. So we have a break in between. And then as far as the live, you'll see the live stream start again at 2 p.m. Eastern, and we'll go to 2:45 p.m. Eastern, and then we're done today. So it's a shorter day by one person. And then, of course, with us having Evan on as a pre-record, it's four live instead of 6. So it's a much shorter day, but you do not want to miss James Redfield, who wrote the Celestine Prophecy, one of the best-selling books of all time.
Celestine Prophecy book, right here.
And James and all the insight. I'm going to do my best. Kelly will as well, to pull out of James how he launched that book. And I can tell you from past interviews, it was very intentional. There's an entire process that we're going to be able to reveal to you. So if you've ever wanted to listen to somebody about how to launch a book, this is the one you want to listen to. This is the interview. So we're going to be back here. Kelly and I will meet back here again at, let me check the time, 2 p.m. Eastern. So Kelly, I'll meet you back here then. Everybody else, I'll meet you back here then. And we will hopefully have, I'm sure we will, a magical time during that interview.
Excellent.
So thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Have a good lunch break, and I'll see you soon.
You bet.